You are, right now, more addicted to sugar than any human who has ever lived. Not because you have less willpower than your ancestors. Not because you're weak. Because your brain is running software that was written for a world that stopped existing about 10,000 years ago. And nobody updated it. Somewhere deep in your skull, there's a reward system built by millions of years of evolution to do exactly one thing. Make you crave the sweetest thing you can find and eat as much of it as physically possible. That system was genius once. Right now it's fighting you every single time you walk past a bakery. So where did this come from? When did the human brain decide that sugar was the single greatest thing in the universe? The answer starts a lot earlier than you think, and it gets weirder the further back you go. Let's go back roughly 60 million years, long before there were humans, before there were even primates as we'd recognize them. Our earliest ancestors were small, tree-dwelling mammals, and their entire world revolved around one resource: ripe fruit. Ripe fruit meant sugar, and sugar meant fast, reliable calories in a world where calories were never guaranteed. Here's the part that should blow your mind. Researchers studying primate evolution have found that our ancestors, at some point, lost the ability to produce vitamin C internally. Almost every other mammal on Earth can make its own vitamin C. We can't. Why would evolution take away something so useful? Because our ancestors were eating so much vitamin C-rich fruit that making it internally became a waste of energy. Evolution doesn't keep expensive backup systems for problems that food already solves. We didn't lose that ability by accident. We lost it because sugar was already everywhere in our diet, tens of millions of years before agriculture, before cooking, before anything you'd call human civilization. Now fast forward to early hominins walking the plains of Africa. Fruit wasn't always available. Seasons changed. Droughts happened. And in that unpredictable world, a brain that could detect sugar and react to it instantly had a massive survival advantage. Your tongue has taste receptors specifically tuned to detect sweetness at incredibly low concentrations, more sensitive than your ability to detect bitterness in many cases, which is strange when you think about it, because bitterness usually signals poison. Sweetness signals safety and energy. Evolution built a brain that treats sugar detection like a 5-alarm fire of good news. When sugar hits your tongue, your brain releases dopamine, the same chemical involved in nearly every other reward pathway you have. This wasn't designed to make you happy for fun. It was designed as a survival alarm that said, "This is calorie dense. This won't kill you. Eat as much as you physically can, right now, because you don't know when you'll find this again." And here's where it gets genuinely wild. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies have documented something remarkable. When groups like the Hadza in Tanzania find a beehive, something changes in their behavior almost instantly. Honey is, calorie for calorie, one of the most sugar-dense foods available in nature, and hunter-gatherers have been documented risking serious bodily harm, climbing enormous trees, getting stung dozens or hundreds of times, all to get access to it. Not because they're reckless, because the ancient reward calculation in their brain says the sugar is worth the pain. Some researchers estimate that honey may have made up a meaningful portion of caloric intake for certain hunter-gatherer populations during specific seasons, which tells you something important. This isn't a story about willpower. This is a story about a brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. In an environment where sugar was rare, dangerous to obtain, and gone the moment you found it. That's the key detail, by the way. For 99% of human history, sugar was never sitting in a cabinet. It was seasonal. It was scarce. It required work, risk, and luck. A piece of fruit ripened for a few weeks a year. A beehive might exist for one lucky afternoon. The brain that evolved under those conditions had absolutely no reason to develop an off switch, because there was never enough sugar around for an off switch to matter. Nobody needed portion control in a world where the entire yearly supply of sugar might fit in a single basket. The craving system evolved to be maximal and relentless because restraint was never the problem. Scarcity was the problem. Then something happened that broke the entire system. Agriculture arrived, roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago, and with it came the slow, gradual process of humans learning to cultivate sweeter and sweeter plants. But the real turning point came later, and it's more recent than most people realize. Sugarcane cultivation and refining techniques developed in South and Southeast Asia over a couple thousand years, And by the medieval period, refined sugar was making its way into European trade routes as an extraordinarily expensive luxury good, so rare and costly that it was literally stored in locked boxes alongside jewels and treated as a form of currency among the aristocracy. For most of human history, concentrated sugar was something only the wealthiest people on Earth could access with any regularity. Your ancient craving system, the one built over 60 million years, had absolutely no defense against something like that, because nothing like that had ever existed before. And then the Industrial Revolution happened. Sugar production scaled up dramatically, driven by colonial plantation economies, and prices collapsed. What had once been an occasional treat requiring immense effort to obtain became, for the first time in the entire history of our species, cheap, abundant, and available every single day. Your brain did not get the memo that the world changed. The dopamine system built to reward the rare discovery of a beehive is the exact same system lighting up when you eat a piece of candy from a bowl on your desk, except now that bowl refills itself infinitely. You are running Stone Age software on a supermarket-era operating system, and the mismatch is not subtle. This is where things get uncomfortable, because modern science backs this up in ways that are honestly a little unsettling. Studies on the brain's response to sugar have found activation patterns in reward centers that overlap substantially with the patterns seen in response to certain addictive substances. This doesn't mean sugar and hard drugs are equivalent. They're clearly not. But it does mean your brain isn't distinguishing between rare survival resource and thing I bought at a gas station nearly as well as you'd hope. Some researchers have even proposed that repeated exposure to high concentrations of refined sugar can lead to tolerance and withdrawal-like symptoms in animal studies. Mice given intermittent access to sugar solutions show behavioral patterns that researchers have compared to substance-seeking behavior. The ancient alarm bell is still ringing, constantly, because as far as your biology is concerned, that beehive never stopped being rare and precious. So when did humans first get addicted to sugar? In one sense, the honest answer is never, because for almost all of human history there was nothing to be addicted to. The craving existed for tens of millions of years, but the supply that could actually feed that craving into a real addiction simply didn't exist until a couple of centuries ago. What you're experiencing every time you reach for something sweet isn't a personal failure. It's a 60-million-year-old survival instinct meeting a food environment that evolution never had time to prepare for. Your ancestors climbed trees and risked bee stings for a fraction of the sugar sitting in your kitchen right now. They would have been thrilled to have your problem. And somewhere in the back of your brain, an ancient alarm is still going off every time you walk past a vending machine, still convinced that this, finally, might be the last sweet thing you'll ever find.